delighted to have a very special guest today, somebody who played 169 times for Australia, 259 Test wickets, 142 ODI wickets. He was a member of some of the greatest Australian teams ever, all conquering teams that won all around the world. He's coached in Zimbabwe, Yorkshire, Sussex, worked in the IPL, worked at Adelaide Strikers in the BBL, and he's now the coach of South Australia. Delighted to have Jason Gillespie as my next guest. Hope you're well, Jason.
I'm going really well, thank you. Yeah, really well. We moved house today, so it's been a bit bedlam in the Gillespie household. It's been a bit crazy.
Hope the house move goes well, mate.
Thank you.
Where else to start, Jason, than David Warner and Mitchell Johnson? Mitchell Johnson certainly didn't hold back when he was a bowler, and he's not holding back at the moment regarding David Warner. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, he certainly hasn't been holding back, and I think where it first started, I think from my understanding of reading reading the whole situation, is that I think Mitchell Johnson in an article found it strange that a player's wife was commenting on selection for teams, and I think that he brought that out in the open in his column, and I think David didn't take too kindly to that. So I think some messages were exchanged, and from what Mitchell was saying, and I suppose their relationship in a way has probably deteriorated a little bit, and then Mitchell has come out saying that does David deserve a farewell test series when for the last couple of years he's probably performed under par. So I think that was a fair assessment from Mitchell Johnson that David probably hasn't scored the runs that he or Australia would have liked, and he was calling that into question. I think where a lot of people are wondering is it has this started to get quite personal, and I think Mitchell has essentially acknowledged that on the back of a text message exchange a little while ago. So look, everyone's entitled to an opinion. When you're a former player and you're asked to write opinion pieces, you have to speak your mind and say what you think. But yeah, it just feels that this situation has just got quite personal. But I think there was no issue from my end from Mitchell asking questions about David's place in the side, because he probably hasn't scored the runs that he'd like. But I think also, where the Australian selectors and the Australian coaching staff are at, they're probably thinking, well, this is a guy who's played 100 test matches, 100 plus test matches, has been involved in a lot of winning teams. He's scored a lot of runs in all formats. Yeah, he's probably had a bit of a low period, but we're going to back an experienced senior player in. And also, there's no one else that's probably banging the door down over the last couple of years in Australian domestic cricket to say, no, that spot's mine. So I think it's been twofold.
The Australian cricketer's mentality, I think for many of us, it's difficult to comprehend just how mentally tough you guys are. I mean, as I said before, all conquering teams for many, many years. You go to India, win a World Cup in front of 100,000 plus people. Could you just describe that battle-hardened mentality within that Australian dressing room over the years?
I think it certainly starts at club level and then going into first class cricket. Our first class cricket is a very high standard. There's 6 teams, there's 6 states that compete for the Sheffield Shield, and that cricket is very hard fought, and you certainly earn your stripes there. There's no place to hide. So I think Australian players have always, each and every time they walk on the park representing their club or their state, they know they're in for a battle. They know they're in for a real tough contest, and the game's played hard. It's played hard and fair, but it certainly separates the men from the boys, so to speak. And I think that just hardened, is a good term of phrase, I suppose. You are conditioned to go out there and play the game and look to win at every opportunity.
That domestic cricket, this Sheffield Shield that you mentioned there, it's
Yep.
not far away from international cricket. So that stepping stone from domestic cricket to international cricket seems to be a small one.
Yeah, that's a good assessment. I think the big jump in Australian cricket is going from club cricket to first class cricket, and that would be consistent all around the world. You go from one playing Saturday to the following Saturday, with a week off in between, to playing 4 days of cricket in a row. It's a big jump, and but then the jump going from 4-day cricket to 5-day cricket, maybe not so much. I certainly played Sheffield Shield games that had the intensity of a test match. There's no doubt about that. And I think I can speak for most players in Australian cricket that at some point they've played a Shield game that's been, of a very, very high standard, close to international standard, that's for sure.
I want to speak to you about Pat Cummins, who many thought was struggling as a captain, but now he seems to have earned his stripes. He's blossoming as a skipper. Your thoughts on his leadership and his qualities?
Yeah, I think he's been excellent, Pat. I'll be honest, and I like a lot of people. Probably when Australia lost their first 2 games in the World Cup, in the group stage, just wondered if this group of players were just a bit worn out, a bit tired. They'd had a really tough Test series against England for the Ashes. They went to South Africa. They played some cricket there. They then went to India early and were playing some cricket there. They looked tired. They looked a bit burnt out. But I think it's a testament to the leadership of Pat Cummins. There was, I suppose, not criticism, but some question marks, leading into the World Cup, of the Australian players probably spending more time on the golf course than they were actually training, and maybe that was the genius in it from the leadership of the Australian side with Pat Cummins and Andrew McDonald and his staff, that they felt they've played a lot of cricket. That maybe the lead into this tournament is all about just de-stressing and just clearing minds, and making sure lads are really clear and have had some relaxed downtime. So I think that's part of the leadership, and I think the way Pat, it appears, I'm not involved, I'm not close to it, but you hear bits and pieces, and he's very calm, relaxed captain who's creating an environment where players can speak openly and freely. And there's a term of phrase they have, the Australian side, in preparation for training and games, is own your own space, and it's all about you're big enough and ugly enough, essentially, to prepare yourself for a day's play. So own your space, just get what you need. We're here to support you as a support staff, and the captain's on board with that, the coach is on board with that, the coaching staff's on board with that. And I think that's that environment that Pat Cummins, in conjunction with Andrew McDonald and his coaching staff, have cultivated, I think has certainly been a massive positive.
For many Pakistani cricket followers, the thought of a test series in Australia sends shivers down our spine. The last 14 tests, lost all 14, and 28 years since a victory in Australia. That was in Sydney. It's going to be a walk in the park, this, isn't it, for Australia?
Oh, look, I'd never say a test match, or a test series is going to be a walk in the park. History would suggest Australia, quite rightly, will start favourites. I mean, I think around the world, like we're seeing between the probably top 6, 7, 8 countries, it's shown over the years that it's very difficult to win a test series away from home. It's very difficult. It doesn't matter what team you are. Even this Australian side, which I think is a fantastic team, they managed to retain the Ashes, but they didn't come away with an actual win. They drew the series, which retained the Ashes, but that just, to me, shows just how hard it is to win away from home. That's why I suppose India's series win a couple of years ago in Australia was era defining. And I certainly think Pakistan, it's going to be an uphill battle. There's no doubt about that. It's a challenge to come and play Australia in Australian conditions. But this Pakistan squad need to have that belief that, look, we can compete with the likes of Australia, and we're going to come here with a positive attitude, and we're going to play positive cricket, and we're going to try and hang in there as long as we can, and and really work hard to wear this Australian team down. And I think that needs to be Pakistan's approach. Is how can they win an hour? How can they win a session? Can they just keep chipping away, being patient, being disciplined? That for me will be the way to play against Australia, is just chip away. Win the first half an hour, win the first hour, win the session, and go from there.
In terms of Pakistan's chances, a lot rests on Shaheen Shah Afridi. What do you think of him as a bowler?
Yeah, I love watching him bowl. The old fast bowler in me, Saj. I just love watching good fast bowling and great fast bowling, and I certainly put Shaheen in that category. I love watching him bowl. He runs in, he bowls really good pace. He swings the ball, and he can swing it quite late. He can get some reverse swing as well. He bowls very disciplined lines and very disciplined lengths. He's an aggressive bowler, and his bowling is suited to Australian conditions. If he can get the ball to swing, that's probably always been. If there's one thing that Australian batsmen, over the years have probably struggled with at times, is really good, genuine swing bowling. And if Shaheen Afridi can get it right, then he could cause some real trouble.
Putting runs on the board for Pakistan has always been a problem in Australia, given the conditions, and a lot rests on Babar Azam. What do you think of Babar Azam? Obviously, until recently, he was the captain in all three formats. Now that he hasn't got that burden, so to speak, how do you expect him to perform in Australia this time around?
I think he'll perform well. I think his game is suited to it. We talked about, I suppose in this current era, they talk about the big four players. Virat Kohli, Kane Williamson, Steve Smith, Joe Root. I'd certainly put Babar Azam in that category as well. I'd be saying the big five, because I think he's a wonderful player. I think he's played some extraordinary innings. He has led his country, and I think you're right. Maybe that not having that the captaincy resting on his shoulders might just be a good thing for him. Might just free him up and just allow him the opportunity to just go out there and go and bat and score as many runs as he can for his country.
Finally, Pakistan, do you give them any chances, or are we going to see another 3-0?
No, I certainly think the first test match in Perth at Perth Stadium, nice fast bouncy track, I think that's really going to test the Pakistan batsmen out against an incredibly fine fast bowling unit that Australia has. Mitchell Starc, Josh Hazlewood, Pat Cummins will go down as three of Australia's best ever fast bowlers, and they're all playing together. It's wonderful to see. As a cricket fan myself, I love watching these guys go about their work. They'll be supported by either a Mitch Marsh or Cameron Green, and then obviously Nathan Lyon. Nathan Lyon will play. There's no question of that. But Australia's also got Lance Morris in their squad, and maybe Pakistan supporters would not have seen much of Lance Morris, but he's quick. He is genuinely quick, and he's probably the fastest bowler in Australia, alongside when Mitchell Starc gets it right. Those two are probably well and truly the fastest bowlers in Australia, and Lance Morris can really cause some issues. So I think the Perth Test is going to be a really, really challenging game for the Pakistan team, but Melbourne and Sydney might just suit them a little bit better. The surfaces aren't as quick and bouncy. Sydney in particular could take some turn, and that may suit Pakistan a little bit better.
Going there with a new captain as well, Shan Masood, who's going to be under pressure, and the Australian mentality is to target the opposition captain as well, isn't it?
Yep, no doubt, and they'll know that if Australia can, the Australians will know if they can keep Shan Masood quiet from a run-making perspective, then that could have an impact on the rest of the team. Shan Masood, to me, comes across as a very calming influence. I know he's had a little bit of experience captaining Yorkshire in the county championship as well. I'm not sure how much more captaincy experience he's had at domestic level or the like, but he comes across as a calming influence, and no greater test of your captaincy skills and your leadership than leading a team to Australia. So big job for Shan Masood, but I'm sure the Pakistan selectors have picked him knowing that he is absolutely the best man for the job.
Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the series, but not too much. Yeah. Who knows? We might see a Pakistan victory. Let's see. But and I hope the house move goes well, mate. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. And I think we're all looking forward to a really good series. We certainly don't want to see a one-sided series. We want to see some really good, hard-fought Test cricket, which I'm really confident that we're going to get. So thank you. Yep, I'll keep getting back to the move and see how we go. But thank you.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Take care.